Greetings, instrumentalists, non-instrumentalists, and potentially others that we're unaware of. I am Robert.
And this is Josh.
We're at Central Music.
Right there.
And we're going to have a conversation, but not just any conversation. This is conversation.
Part 2.
Two. So, in our last video, we started to discuss practice a little bit, and Josh brought up
Solo Ensemble Festival.
Solo and Ensemble Festival, which is great and also probably involves practice.
Music. And practice.
Practicing music.
Practicing music.
It's a thing.
We're very good at this.
Our content is fantastic. Don't forget to like and subscribe, everyone, if you want more of this.
Which you know you do.
Of course you do. So, Solo and Ensemble.
Yes.
Students are picking out some music, sometimes with the help of a mentor, band director, private teacher.
And sometimes not.
Right? But there's a lot that goes into preparing for that performance.
Yes. Yeah, so definitely this is going to shape and change your practice schedule over the next few months and up into January for
So, there are pitfalls, like everything. There are pitfalls to this time of year when you're preparing this solo and ensemble music, don't you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first step is choosing something that's appropriately leveled. And not only picking something that maybe is engaging to you and that you enjoy playing, but finding something that maybe works on maybe a weakness in your playing or accentuates a strength. I think you kind of have to look at the time you're going to have during these couple of months up until Solo Ensemble, like some of you are involved in other activities, and that's going to affect what you can prepare.
I do think, though, that if you make the choice to participate in Solo Ensemble, the musical selection should not be made with an eye towards, well, I won't have to work very hard to perform well at this. If you're going to take the time to engage in it, make it worthwhile for yourself and push yourself a little bit. Don't over-program yourself.
Yeah.
Because that just leads to stress and
anxiety.
Absolutely. But you do want to challenge yourself a little bit. So once you've found that music, then how do we integrate that into our practice? Because I do think it's important to be mindful that we should not practice our solo ensemble music to the exclusion of everything else.
Right.
Right?
Yeah, like, oh yeah, I got my S&E music, so I don't have to play scales.
All right, no more scales are important, long tones are important. And
no more fundamentals, just solo ensemble.
Well, and let's be real for a minute. Those fundamentals that we often feel are boring and that many students say, why do I have to do this?
Right.
It's spending the time on that that's going to help your results.
Be successful, for sure.
You know, when it comes to having a performance like Solo Ensemble.
Yeah.
What other types of things do you want to throw into your practice routine to be ready?
So, I mean, especially on a brass instrument, you always want to have a short warm-up. I like, when I'm working on with students for Solo and Ensemble, I like to tailor the warm-up a little bit so that you're covering some aspect of the solo. So let's say, for instance, the solo has a number of trills in it. I might have a trilling exercise that goes along with their warm-up. Maybe doing some extra scale patterns that are within the key of the piece that you're playing for Solo Ensemble, key or keys. So I like to think intentionally about how I warm up. And then the next thing I like to do for my students is break up the solo into chunks to focus on. One of the pitfalls I see kids run into when they're practicing for S&E is they just want to get their solo out and do 10 run-throughs on it. Whereas if I tell them, hey, this week you can do a couple run-throughs, but you're going to spend most of your time working on measures 1 through 33. And then you're really taking measures 1 through 33, focusing on not only getting all the notes and rhythms correct, but elements such as phrasing, articulation, making sure there's no phasing in the time.
And that's actually the fun part to me
Right.
There's an idea out there that once the notes and rhythms are down and you can get from the upper left-hand corner to the bottom right-hand corner without any mistakes, that you're finished.
Right.
But when you can do that, that's when the fun begins. That's when we start to make it into music. And one of the things that I really enjoy about this time of year when we're working on solo ensemble music is we get to do some things that we don't always do in our other practice. And one of those things is to look at the period and style of the piece, right?
Right.
Learn about that period in music or what stylistic cues are in that music.
Right.
Listen to other music of that style and then play our piece in the style in which it's intended to be played.
Right. Really make an artistic decision as to how you're going to interpret it, an appropriate one.
Right. You wouldn't
Not
want
just guessing.
You wouldn't want to play a piece that was written in the Baroque period,
Right.
let's say, like you're playing some romantic piece.
Correct.
It would not be appropriate. Your articulations would not be correct. Phrasing maybe.
Yeah, and like I would recommend, once you kind of have the skeleton, the piece laid out at least, doing some listens of a couple of different artists performing your solo. And listen intentionally, not just in the background while you're doing something else. Is the tempo different from what you're doing or from what one of the other artists is doing? Do they do any articulation patterns different from what's written in your music? You can actually make that adjustment as long as you do it in your score.
And that's not to say that you have to emulate exactly whatever that artist is doing, but if you deviate from that, you should have a reason artistically why you're deviating from that. And it needs to make sense within the concept of the period of the piece.
Yes.
Does that
Yeah.
kind of make sense where I'm headed with that?
Completely.
And it wouldn't hurt to, if you want to better inform your performance, it doesn't hurt to listen to other pieces by the same composer from the same period.
Yeah. I definitely think that's smart.
Because if you spend a lot of time working on something, anything, whether it's a solo ensemble piece or not, you can experience a level of burnout with it.
Right.
And one way to keep it fresh is say, okay, well, if I'm playing something, I use the example of Baroque. So let's say I'm playing some kind of Bach violin concerto that's been, in my case, transcribed for the marimba, right?
Right.
Maybe I'll listen to other Bach violin concertos.
Maybe you'll actually listen to it on violin.
Maybe I would actually listen to it on violin. That's actually a really good point that you make, because for several of the instruments, saxophones a lot.
Yeah.
These are transcriptions of music that was written for another instrument. So to get the idea of what the intended articulations and sounds were, maybe it helps to listen, in my case, like to it played on a violin.
Right. The phrasing, all that.
And if you do all this, just to kind of wrap this up, if you do all this intentional work and you don't give up on the other items in your practice and you have your performance, is the most important thing in this process the outcome on that day, Joshua?
No.
The ribbon that you get?
No.
I agree.
It's the journey, not the destination.
100%.
Right.
I think by participating and doing the steps that we have outlined, you will improve and you will grow as a musician because you've done it. Mm-hmm. And the outcome of one performance on one day in one moment matters far less than what you've learned along the way.
Agreed.
And that kind of goes to a previous video, which you are welcome to visit on this very
Right.
YouTube channel where we talked about performance.
I'm sure you watched it already, but
I mean, obviously.
it's there if you need to revisit. Take some notes.
So, this could very easily be applied not just to solo and ensemble, but any artist who's looking ahead to a performance, the music that they're going to play.
Yes.
And so I will wish not only the students who are preparing for solo ensemble a wonderful journey, but also anybody who is on this road working on some music right now. If you have ideas for how to improve your practice, please share them with all of us in the comments. And as always, we appreciate you watching our videos.
Yes.
And you've made it to the end. That's an accomplishment.
Yes. Use a metronome.
Good advice.
One more little tidbit there for you.
It's random advice.
Well, since you made it to the end, it's good, right?
Yeah. Now this is really the end.
Yeah. Well, maybe this is, though.
What are you doing? Fight. What are you doing?
I don't know. It's like Street Fighter. They have like the second round, and it goes, fight.
Too obscure, Josh. Too obscure. Here we go.